The history of South America, 8000 BCE to present. In 8000 BCE, people show up in southern South America. And in 7000 to 4000 BCE, the Athabascans settled in the Pacific Northwest. In 3000, there is corn, which is what they mostly ate along with some animals. But by 2000 BCE, the large game goes poof. So people have to go to smaller game, like fish. From 2200 BCE, people learn to farm more, and they mate more, creating a rising population. From 3500 to 1700 BCE, ceramics show up in the Ecuadorian coast. So now there's pottery, a lot of it. The same thing happens in the Peruvian highlands in 800 through 200 BCE. And from 200 BCE to 1000 CE, there is an emergence of cities, social stratification, and flowering of material culture. Around that time, the Nazca people settled in the southwestern region of South America. And in 600 to 800 CE, there is a rise in urban cities and empires. And from 1000 to 1492, urban, stratified, militarized, and imperialistic empires rise. But there are many technological improvements.
In the mid-1400s, the Incan Empire covered Peru, Bolivia, northern Argentina, Chile, and Ecuador. It began as a tribe in the Cusco, Peru area, and from there the Inca state grew to absorb other Andean communities. In 1442, the Incas began a far-reaching expansion across the western edges of the continent. They did great for a while until, in the year 1492, this guy Columbus sailed the ocean all the way to here. "I have found India. This is India. You guys are Indians," he said as he began to enslave and kill the natives. Another guy, Francisco Pizarro, arrived in the 1500s intent on finding treasure and conquering rich land. He killed the Incas with his superior military skills and vast amounts of money. In 1532, he conquers Ecuador. Get that one squared away. He finishes the job in 1533 when he conquered Inca territory at their capital of Cusco. Then a bunch of cities were established: Cartagena, Lima, Buenos Aires, Asuncion, and Chile. In 1555, there's a smallpox epidemic along coastal Brazil. Hope that doesn't happen again. "I need more invasions like I need a bullet in the head," said Inca leader Tupac Amaru, and then was beheaded. In 1613, smallpox says, "I bet you thought you'd seen the last of me to Brazil." And in 1616, Dutch explorers shout and sails across Cape Horn, and it's a pretty big deal. In 1693, gold is discovered in Brazil. More gold than any other gold reserve ever. In 1720, Spain and Chile wonder if their repressive labor practices are bad. They are, so they end them. And in 1759, the Spanish expelled Jesuits from Brazil. Later on, in the 1800s, Britain is so salty that Spain helped America win independence from them, so they take Buenos Aires from Spain. And in 1807, the locals are like, yeah, this isn't going to work out, and expel Britain from Buenos Aires. In 1808, the short guy Napoleon invades Portugal. The king of Portugal, as a sign of defeat, moves his capital city to Brazil. And in 1811, Brazil says, "We're not dating, but we're exclusive," and signs an exclusive trade deal with Britain. In 1813, this rich guy, Simon Bolivar, invades Venezuela from Bogota. Bolivar has a cool mustache and dresses really fancy. In 1814, he is defeated, however, and is expelled from Venezuela. And in 1818, Colombia says slavery is bad and abolishes it by law. And in 1818, Chile declares its independence from Spain. This begins decolonization. In 1821, oh look, there's more decolonization. Peru declares its independence from Spain as well. In 1832, Ecuador is like, is anyone going to take these? And claims the Galapagos Islands for themselves. In 1852, slavery is abolished in Uruguay. Once upon a time, Ecuador and Colombia were best friends. After they both declared independence from Spain, they had a little fight about border control. When the leader of Ecuador was like, "Here you go," to the Roman Catholic Church, Ecuador became a politically polarized country. Colombia was like, "Can you chill?" and provided aid to Ecuadorian liberals. Colombia set up a meeting with Ecuador to discuss borders, but Ecuador didn't show up. Colombia was like, "Okay, let's overthrow the leader of Ecuador." But in 1862, Ecuador declares war on Colombia. And in 1888, slavery is abolished in Brazil.
South America was not very involved in World War I, but Brazil sent surgeons and pilots to serve in Britain's Royal Air Force. In World War II, Brazil was once again the only country to send troops. Chile informally joined the Allies, while Argentina leaned towards the Axis and harbored Nazi war criminals after the war, including Adolf Eichmann, a Holocaust mastermind arrested in 1960 in Buenos Aires and later executed in Israel. From 1948 to 1958, the Civil War, known as La Violencia in Colombia, leaves hundreds of thousands dead. In a bid to stop the fighting, conservatives and liberals together form a national front, but a guerrilla war ensues. By the mid-1960s, numerous groups form in opposition to the conservatives and liberals, which had outlawed all other parties. In 1974, the Colombian government began a protracted offensive against oppositional guerrilla groups. In 1952, the National Revolutionary Movement, known as the MNR, leads a successful revolution in Bolivia. In 1964, a coup by a military junta ends a period of MNR rule. From 1954 to 1989, Alfredo Stroessner is dictator in Paraguay. His regime generally suppresses political opposition, and he is known for allowing Nazi war criminals to seek refuge in Paraguay. In 1963, the Tupamaros guerrilla resistance group is formed with a raid on the Swiss Gun Club in Uruguay. They engaged in political kidnappings and other terrorist attacks, especially in Montevideo. Subsequently transformed into a legitimate political group, the Tupamaros are represented in the Uruguayan parliament from 1995 by José Mujica, who had been jailed for 13 years by the military government. In 1964, the election of Christian Democrat Eduardo Frei Montalva signals the beginning of a period of reform in Chile. He is succeeded by Socialist Party member Salvador Allende, who serves under a military coup supported by the U.S. until he's unseated in 1973 and dies under mysterious circumstances. Some allege his death is the result of the CIA's involvement in toppling his government. Allende is succeeded by the repressive regime of Augusto Pinochet, which continues until 1990. In 1964, Brazilian President João Goulart is ousted from power in a coup and goes into exile. The ensuing military regime is repressive, but presides over a period of economic expansion. From 1968 to 1980, Peru is run by military governments. During the first phase, General Juan Velasco Alvarado, who comes to power in 1968, undertakes agrarian and other social and economic reforms. In the second phase, under the presidency of General Francisco Bermudez Cerruti, the authoritarianism of the first phase is tempered. From 1976 to 1983, the Dirty War takes place in Argentina as the military junta in power persecutes and kills thousands of suspected terrorists and terrorist sympathizers. A return to democracy follows in the 1980s. In 1978, a mass suicide of 914 people, including 276 children, takes place in Jonestown, Guyana. The dead are members of a cult, the People's Temple, led by Jim Jones. In 1980, General Luis Garcia Mesa seizes control of the Bolivian government in a coup following fraudulent elections in 1978, 1979, and 1980. His regime is characterized by crime, mismanagement, and oppression. In 1995, following extradition from Brazil, he is convicted of various crimes and begins serving a 30-year sentence. In 1982, Argentina fights a war with the United Kingdom over the Falkland Islands. Although Argentina surrenders, rights to the Falkland Islands are not relinquished. In 1986, Luiz Ignacio Lula da Silva is elected to the Brazilian Congress. In 1980, Lula had co-founded the Partido dos Trabalhadores, the Workers' Party. With the Workers' Party, he helps to draft Brazil's post-dictatorship constitution. From 1990 to 2000, Alberto Fujimori is president of Peru. He flees to Japan, where allegations of corruption in his government begin to emerge. In 1993, notorious Colombian drug trafficker Pablo Escobar, leader of the Medellin drug cartel, is killed by the Colombian police. His death follows years of assassinations of public officials by drug cartels in response to the Colombian policy of extraditing drug traffickers to the United States. In 2000, the Liberal Party in Paraguay makes its first decisive political gains in 50 years. The party's vice presidential candidate, Julio Cesar Franco, is elected. Paraguay embarks on a program of reform. The 2000s marked the beginning of the Pink Tide movements. South American governments are moving towards the political left and turning to socialism instead of capitalism. From 1998 to 2013, Hugo Chavez serves as president of Venezuela. He is considered a Pink Tide leader, and his socialist economic reforms decimate Venezuela's economy. Inflation rises over 1,000%. In 2013, he dies in office.